Can you just explain to me like the rigging of the talent and then also corresponding the camera? How are you rigging your camera to capture all these moves?
The approach in shooting underwater on stage is pretty much like shooting in space, effectively, where there is no real horizon and people are in constant motion and people relative to each other are always, floating in space. And so we really sort of wanted to devise a way of shooting live where our actors could float, our camera could float. We could have multiple actors in a scene and they're all floating independently of one another. If you can imagine a sort of like effectively a camera crane with a sort of pedestal base on wheels with a sort of, fulcrum. One end is the actor tied into a circular ring that is on ball bearing, so it can rotate 360. So the actor could effectively do a full 360 on axis.
Yes.
But being on the end of this arm means they can also be raised up and down, and left to right and be pushed along on the wheel. So we had a sort of every axis of movement available to us. Couple that with our camera, which is on the end of a telescopic, crane. We're able to then move either, countering their movement or joining them in movement. We were then able to just sort of think of movement and think of the sort of dance and really sort of free ourselves up in terms of, normally musical. When we're working, we're on our feet. We're working on a flat surface, and suddenly we were like, okay, well now we can work vertically. Now she can swim upwards. She can swim down. She can. We're not sort of restrained to feet on the ground anymore.
Did that excite you, or did that overwhelm? I mean, I can imagine.
I think initially it terrified us, because because Rob came from dance, he came from Broadway. He understands putting things on its feet, putting it on a stage and you exit left or you exit right and, that's how it works. But suddenly we were, presented with this idea that you could move in any and every direction. And how do we sort of deconstruct that and put it into a musical, like say when Part of Your World and Ariel swims up to the opening in the top of her sort of grotto. How do we rehearse the timing of that and understand how we're going to break it down? So, it was a complicated process of constructing it on its feet effectively. So we would have to imagine these big moves up and, everything we do in rehearsal, I shoot on a small camera and we sort of work out the timing. So at first, when we were doing it with Hallie on a stage, just with cutouts of all her whatsits and things around her. And, we could sort of walk her through the timing of it and then have to imagine the big surging movements. First part of the process, then we had to sort of put it into rigs and then sort of think, okay, well now she's going to have to be on wires because she needs to travel, 20 feet up. So that's not going to work on our crane rigs for the actors because was limited about how high we could raise them. So we could then break it down and figure out what rigs were applicable to what moment of the song that we had sort of, constructed.